Hello, and welcome to another edition of the AI Insiders podcast, the flagship podcast of USC's Information Sciences Institute AI Division. I'm your host and fellow human, Adam Russell, and I'm also the division director. And I'm on the hunt to know more about the humans who work with me, because I have a hypothesis that for all the breathless headlines and the terrifying doomsday scenarios, the hard to swallow, nothing could go wrong exuberance behind much of AI today, well, at the end of the day, AI is still very much about us, humans. And getting a chance to understand more about these humans behind AI, their why, their how, their what, I think is going to be more, not less important for helping us better understand where we might be headed on this journey with our increasingly capable but very far from perfect machines. I'm joined today by one such human, at least that's what he tells me, Emmanuel Johnson, who is as fresh in this space as I think you can find, just having gotten his PhD a couple of years ago in computer science. Alas, couldn't cut it in anthropology, I guess, Emmanuel, but we'll discuss that in a minute. My understanding is your PhD thesis was titled An Intelligent Tutoring Systems Approach for Negotiation Training, which makes me a bit nervous about this podcast. Am I going to be negotiated out of something? Either way, Emmanuel, welcome to the Answers podcast. You ready?
I am. Thanks for having me.
Good. So I, as you know, ask slightly wacky questions. The goal being not to be another AI podcast talking about neural nets or, word embeddings or anything. Instead, it's about you. So let's start with not just you, but way back in time, you. And let's go back in time where I can now sit and watch you explain to your, let's say, 6 to 10-year-old self, depending on how you want to go, what it is you are doing today.
That's a good question. I think the easiest way I would explain that to my 6 to 10-year-old self is my work is helping people learn how to interact better with each other. I think when we think about our professions and we think about what we do every day, there's always these technical skills that we want to get. If we're a computer scientist, we're thinking about how we can learn new programming languages. And if we're in the sciences general, is how do we do better science? But what we often overlook is how much of that involves us interacting with other people, or maybe we do recognize it, right? But we don't often have that training in how to work well amongst a group. And so my work is helping to teach people how to work better with each other.
Okay. Let's start with the basic irony that you are using, and the term AI is pretty broad and generous, but you're using AI to help codify skills for humans to interact with each other. That's interesting. Do you reflect on that irony at all?
I do. And I'm of the belief that, humans are smarter than AI in a lot of different spaces, right?
And humans.
Right, exactly. So for me, it's like, how do we leverage AI systems as a tool to improve the human experience? There's all of these blind spots we have. If we can help you improve those blind spots in social interaction, then you can have a much more enriched and much more valuable connection and relationship with people.
Yeah. Again, I don't know how you got away from anthropology, but somehow we let you go. But it is an open question of these are oftentimes called soft skills. And we all know, of course, in some cases, they're the hardest skills. Why aren't we already good at teaching that? Why do we need machines to help us?
I think part of the issue is we make a lot of assumptions about other people, and we often look at the world from our perspective. Just simply, I've lived in New Jersey, I lived in North Carolina, spent summers in the Midwest and internships, and now I'm on the West Coast. And all of those groups view and have different value systems. And so as you move from one sort of culture to the next, you realize that people value different things. The way people speak to each other is different. And all of those things are difficult for us to sort of adjust if we're looking at it from our perspective. And so I think there is value in, leveraging technology to really help us practice these skills more effectively.
Okay. What are you most worried about? I mean, if machines can understand us or can get in the middle of our understanding each other, what are you worried most about with where that technology might go?
I worry about representation in the field, because in many ways, when we start building AI to interact with people, we make certain assumptions. So if we're saying this AI is helpful, what does helpful mean? When we say this AI is caring, exactly, what does that mean? And these are some very vague terms that we often try to quantify. And I think when you don't have as diverse of an opinion at the table, what I may think is an agent being caring may not be what the next person thinks. And one example that comes to mind, I think about when I go to other countries, that this tipping practices. In America, nowadays you go anywhere and they're asking you for a tip. In other countries, it's not common, and people value the tip a lot more, or you tip when this is the best service you've received. So even that, there's these subjective rules that are embedded in our culture that if we don't have various voices at the table when we build these machines, they might be, designed from one perspective and not include the other.
So which sort of came first? And let's go back to the 6 to 10-year-old Emmanuel. What did he think he was going to do? Like, what was he interested in? Was it computers, or was it something more to do with this idea of how people get along, or some combination of early?
6 to 10. I'll take you back. So I was born in Liberia and at the heart of the Civil War. So I was born in July and there was a coup in, I think, like October. And this is 1990. So from there until 2003, the country was in a civil war. So my first 8 years of life, that's where I was. So if I think about what Emmanuel was thinking about then, I wanted to play soccer. One of the greatest soccer player to ever live is George Weah. He came out of Liberia. He was the only African player to win the Ballon d'Or. And so that was where I thought my career was going to be in soccer. When I first came here as a kid, my mother bought me a Gateway computer. And so, I just used to spend a lot of time kind of messing around with it, because when I first came to America at the age of 8, this was sort of my first time interacting with a computer, and seeing sort of this technological future. I think over the years, I've had some really good mentors who pushed me. So when I was in high school, I took an intro to computer programming class with a guy by the name of John Miro. What he used to do is he'll have us map out your logic using a flow chart. So his whole thing was, he came from that old school of programmers where is you had to map out your logic before you code it. So, I used to just sit there and do that because I thought it was fun. It felt like a puzzle auto. And so he was the one that was like, you might want to actually consider this as a career path. And I said, oh man, just sit in front of a blue screen all day and write code. This stuff does not seem fun, And so my senior year in high school, I had this idea I used to work at a supermarket as a cashier. So I had this idea for a device that can store all of your savings card, right? Because I got tired of people coming to the cash register not having their savings card to scan. And so I was like, imagine if they had something like this. And this was right before smartphones. And then it became an idea of, what if you could put this on your phone? And as I talked to other people, they helped me expand that to credit cards and all other things. So I try to build it. I entered it into a business idea competition, and I placed top 30 in the state of New Jersey. And I was like, maybe I do pursue this computer science thing to be able to build some of these products. That's sort of where that interest in wanting to go into computer science. And then when I got to undergrad, my summers were all in research lab, and I was just mind blown at the technology, playing with robots, being invited into different research labs and seeing what was happening. And I was like, this is the career path for me.
Well, but then how did you make the leap to, not only is this the career path for me, but I want to use these tools to help me understand other humans, or help other humans understand each other?
Yeah. So what I've learned early on was I could understand and see things, that other people didn't, understand things about others that other people didn't, because I wasn't, and growing up, I wasn't a student with the best grades, but I knew everybody. I knew where to find the resources I needed. If it's a question I have about, a technical matter, I know which student knew that. And so as I was going through my undergraduate program, as we were building these technologies, I often wondered, well, how do you consider the people that are going to use this? I kept realizing that I really care very much about, the human element. Towards the end of undergrad, I remember reading some work from Herb Simon where he talked about we don't really understand humans until we can simulate them. And so he laid out this idea that computer science is a way that we can better understand human, because if we can build a machine to behave the way a human would, then that means we have a better understanding of how humans work. And so I thought that was a really profound idea. So from my end is like, if I can replicate a human by building something similar to the way they behave, maybe then I can use this thing to help solve other issues in society.
Check. Yeah. And as you personally have realized, and I have seen repeatedly in my time at places where engineers and computer scientists have talked about the human, again, people sometimes call the social sciences the soft sciences, but you want to deal with the humans, you're talking about the hardest sciences in that sense. So you are shaping up to be what I call an alien. And I mean that with all due respect. These aliens are people who move from worlds to worlds. Problem with aliens is it's really hard to replicate them. So I'm going to ask you a probably impossible question, which is, if someone were up and coming, interested in getting into this space, given that you have this crazy background behind you, what would you advise them to do?
That's a good question. My advice to them is, don't focus so much on the technology, focus on the problem you're trying to solve. Because I think it's like that old saying goes to a carpenter with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And I think sometimes we come in at it from the technology perspective and then try to retrofit our technology to solve all these other problems. So I would tell them to really get a good sense of what are those things that are really near and dear to them. And so once you have that problem and you're thinking about how to solve it with technology, then I think you can come up with a lot of interesting ideas, and so that's what I would tell them. The problem you're solving are more important than the technology you're building.
That resonates with me. I'm spending a lot of time here thinking, but what are called the Hamming problems, right? What are the most important problems in the space? And what you don't want is then to be asked, so why aren't you working on those? Really unfair question. If you had doubts about me being human, what is the one question you would ask that you think might reveal whether or not I'm actually human?
Ooh, that's that. I don't know. I don't think you can ask just one question.
I think that's probably right.
Yeah. Because it's to me, is the conversation. To me, is a set duration of a conversation, that would need to be had in order to determine whether or not you're a human. I don't think I can ask one question that would reveal that.
No, that is fair. It was an unfair question. That was a very fair answer. And then the notion of conversation, I think, is really important. People talk a lot about trustworthy AI. How do we build trustworthy AI when really trust is built through these kinds of things? Conversation, repeated interaction. Are you hopeful for that?
I am. I think if we want to build trusted AI, we need to build trust with the consumers of technology. We've had these these giant firms that have utilized our data in so many ways, and people don't know. When we keep violating humans' trust and we keep mismanaging their information, they're becoming more apprehensive of new technology that is automated. And so if we're able to address the privacy issue with tech in general, I think people would be more trustworthy. And if they understood how some of these devices work and what they did with data, I think that's how we get towards trustworthy AI.
I spent a long time working in the area of scientific reproducibility. And in this area, there's Samin Vazir is one of the big thinkers, and said something I've never forgotten. She said, we keep talking about how we get people to trust science. And what we should be talking about is how can we make science trustworthy? So that's resonate with me. Let's play a little science fiction game and say a machine has come to life, however you determine that, but acknowledges it does not understand humans. Is there a book or a movie you would point the machine to say, this is your best starting point? Read or watch this if you want to understand humans.
That's a complicated one. You know what? There's a docuseries on the History Channel called The Story of Us. And what it does is it goes through the entire human experience from inception in East Africa to how we sort of went through the world. because I think we definitely want to have these robots understand just how irrational humans are and some of the crazy things we've done to each other over the years, so they know who they're dealing with.
Yeah, that is a fair point. Um, got a couple more questions for you. That's all right before you go. Actually, I have
All
about
right.
1,000 more questions, but we're running out of time. How do you think about AI and creativity? Can AI be creative? Yeah, where's the role for AI in creativity?
I think AI can be creative. When I was younger, there was a point where I wanted to be an artist. When I think about those classes I took, yes, it was being creative, but we started off learning other people's style, right? And so, in many ways, creativity or these new ideas is just taking two sort of distinct idea that nobody had thought could be joined together and bringing them together. And there's always often this saying among artists that good artists copy, great artists steal, and there's that recognition that to a certain extent you're not creating anything from thin air.
Right. It's recombination and some power of analogical thinking. I see this even in my own daughters now of, oh, this is like that, even
Exactly.
though it's clearly not the same thing. Yeah. That's very insightful. One of the things that the humans are fairly creative at, or right now seem to have the advantage over machines, is humor. Do you have a good AI joke?
I don't.
No,
I
no,
don't.
where the machines are
You
listening.
know,
Come on, man, we got to.
right.
It's okay.
Maybe that is a good one to decide if you're human or not. How good of a joke can you tell? Because it's not just the joke itself; it's the delivery, the intonation, the pauses, all of that.
Mhm. All right. Well, we'll hang to that then, as it were. Last question really is, what do you think is, or what is your favorite sort of AI themed movie or book?
I think I have a few. There was one. I'm trying to remember the name of it, but it was this. I think it's like Robot and Frank or something like that. But this old guy has this home robot that's caring for him, and come to find out, his son brought this robot to take care of him, but the guy robs. It's like a old school burglar, so
Mhm.
he's going around with this robot essentially committing crime because the robot's goal is to take care of him. And I thought it was really interesting because I think Sherry Turkle said it well. She said technology really sort of amplifies who we are. And
Mhm.
so with this robot, what it showed is that, this guy is going to be who he is. And if you give him a robot, it's just going to amplify.
Yeah, your talk here reminds me of E.O. Wilson said that our biggest dilemma stems from the fact that we have Paleolithic emotions, we have medieval institutions, and we have godlike technology.
It's a great way to look at it.
So, Manuel, we're running out of time. Let me just take this chance to say thank you for coming on the podcast, being brave enough. I'm sorry that you're gonna. I mean, I'm excited for your future. I'm sorry it's not gonna be here in the right now, but I'm looking forward to staying in touch and continuing to work with you.
Absolutely. Thank you for inviting me onto the podcast. I haven't had a chance to meet you in person, so I'll say welcome to ISI.
Thank you.
Yeah, and definitely looking forward to where AI goes and where your leadership takes the AI division.
And I will take all the input I can get. So if you even when you're not here, if you have ideas, please send them my way because the world and therefore leadership in it needs to be in permanent beta. So again, thanks for taking the time to be here, for being really a lot of fun and being in this fight with us. I think to make sure our increasingly AI godlike technology ends up helping, in your words, helping us amplify and realize our best selves.
Absolutely.
And if we do this right, maybe helping us be better than we've ever been before.
Right.
Well, so if this is going to happen, it's probably up to you, Manuel. No pressure. But it's also up to me, as you point out. It's up to everyone at ISI, up to everyone listening, and more. This is sort of all hands on deck, I think, and this really matters. So, reporting once more from ISI, I want to thank everyone for joining us. Please join us again as I continue to talk with the humans behind AI on my quest, which could be your quest too, to better appreciate, frankly, my amazingly good luck to work with such incredible people, and to help embrace the responsibility that comes with working with them at such an incredible time in our species' history. If you're enjoying what I think is a rather unique podcast, please help us connect and contribute by sharing it with others. And until then, fight on.